Good morning and welcome to Law Talk with Ethel Mitchell. Now for today's show, here's attorney Ethel Mitchell.
Law Talk with Ethel Mitchell is sponsored by Equity Resource, a development, construction, and investment firm that is transforming properties throughout the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. Our mission is to develop properties at a high level of value, a low risk of investment, while providing impeccable service to our customers. When you're ready to sell, renovate, or invest in a property, choose Equity Resource. Call us today at 202-621-6632 or visit our website, equityresource.net.
News Talk 1450 WOL, Washington, D.C., a Radio 1 station, and worldwide at WOLDCnews.com.
The views and opinions of the following show do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of News Talk 1450 WOL, Radio 1 Incorporated, or their management.
Good morning. Good morning and welcome to Law Talk with Ethel Mitchell. I am your host, Attorney Ethel Mitchell. Welcome to all who are listening live throughout the world on Radio 1 Station 1450 AM, WOLDCnews.com, and LawTalkWithEthelMitchell.com. We have a great program for you today. As most of you are aware, especially those in the D.C. area, there are brand new marijuana laws on the books, and I have two guests who are very familiar with those laws, who will discuss the changes that those laws bring and why it's so important to our community. But first, this program is brought to you by my law office, Wills and Trust, LLC, where I prepare wills, trust, and the power of attorneys, advance medical directives. So if you or someone you know needs a will, a trust, or assistance administering an estate, give me a call at 202-772-1988. That's 202-772-1988. Law is powerful. It can help you or it can hurt you. It impacts everything you do. What you don't know can hurt you, but what you do know can empower you. Each week, this program, Law Talk with Ethel Mitchell, aims to empower you by bringing you professionals who know the law. I must remind you, though, that what you hear on the program is for information purposes only. No attorney-client relationship is established by anything said on this program. Each person's circumstances are different, and you must seek individual counsel for any situation for which you need legal advice. All of our programs are archived on LawTalkWithEthelMitchell.com. So if you missed a program, go to LawTalkWithEthelMitchell.com, click on Archives, and all the programs are there. In particular, our program last week, I got so many emotional responses from the program on the Slave Museum. So I made sure that was up early in the week. If you wanted to hear more about Whitney Plantation, you can go to the website, click on that, and you can hear Attorney John Cummings and Dr. Seck and that program from last week. And, of course, you can always Google WhitneyPlantation.com. All of our programs are there. My executive producer is in Stacy Royster is in Selma, Alabama, with the celebration of the 50th anniversary of the March on Selma. But you can still join us by calling in to 1-800-450-7876. So let's get started. Let me tell you a bit about our guest today. Dr. Malik Burnett is a surgeon, a medical doctor who got his bachelor degree and medical degree at Duke University, and he also got a Master's of Business Administration at the Farquaad School of Business, which is also at Duke University. He completed his internship in surgery at the Massachusetts School of Medicine. He serves on the Duke University Board of Trustees, and as a graduate student served on the Student National Medical Association's National Health Policy and Legislative Action Committee. He was also a health fellow at the Aspen Institute's Health Forum, and he's also an Eagle Scout with the Boy Scouts of America. Our other guest, attorney Seema Sadananda, is a graduate of Tulane University and the American University School of Law. Seema is the Policy and Advocacy Director of the ACLU National Capital Area chapter and oversees legislative advocacy efforts in defending civil rights and liberties in the district. She leads the organization's efforts in combating discrimination and addressing other issues that have a disproportionate impact on communities of color. You can read her statement, her written statement, in the May 8, 2014 hearing before the United States Congress on the District of Columbia's Marijuana Possession Decriminalization Amendment Act of 2014 online. Both of them you can also look up and contact through their organizations online. And later in the program, I'm going to give you their office telephone numbers, their email addresses, and their social media contact. But welcome. Dr. Burnett, are you on the line there?
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you very much. And Seema, Attorney Sadananda, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, great. Very good. Very good. Thank you both for joining me on Law Talk with Ethel Mitchell and sharing this information about the impact of drug laws on our community. Let me first ask you, I'm sure a rather obvious question, Dr. Burnett. Why in the world did you give up your career as a surgeon to work on drug laws?
So I just kind of took a break from practicing medicine, actually. I worked in the Office of National Affairs of the Drug Policy Alliance, and, I've been working on issues related to civil rights and working with underserved communities before I got into practicing medicine. And I was working on medical marijuana, expanding access to medical marijuana, and doing research around medical marijuana in Massachusetts while practicing surgery. And while all that was taking place, I managed to read the book, The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander, which kind of really opened my eyes to
yes.
how the drug war is perpetuating a system of second-class citizenry on people of color. And so was invited down by the Drug Policy Alliance to Washington, D.C. to help run Initiative 71, and so I have been doing that for the past year, and I'll probably be headed back to practicing medicine at Hopkins in the summer.
Okay. So repeat for my listeners the book that you just recited to, because it's very important and very powerful. If anyone wants to know about this subject of drug wars and the prison industry, Michelle Alexander's book. What is the name of it again, please? Would you just repeat that?
It's called The New Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration in the 21st Century.
Okay, very good. One other thing, though, before we go on into the law, I as a medical doctor, I'd like to ask you, I remember years ago when the subject came up of marijuana, it was often said that marijuana led you to harder drugs, that it was bad for you, and that it encouraged people, especially young people, to get into heroin and cocaine and so on like that. Is that true?
No, that's patently false. At this point in time, the numerous scientific studies have come out to debunk the gateway theory. The Institute of Medicine has come out and said that there's nothing intrinsic to the marijuana plant that causes you to lead to using harder drugs. So it's just simply not true, and it's usually a scare tactic that people who are against policy reform use to try to dissuade people from looking at a different path forward.
Okay. My audience, I'm going to give out the phone number. If you have any questions, you can call us at 1-800-450-7876. Now, Seema, you're a lawyer, and you've been involved with this issue quite a bit. It is my understanding that you reviewed the arrest records of the D.C. Metropolitan Police directly from their records. What did you find with respect to the arrest for marijuana possession?
Well, I mean, I can summarize by saying that the ACLU found that black people in the District of Columbia were essentially being singled out for marijuana enforcement. We know a lot about marijuana use because of government-funded studies on marijuana use and behaviors related to marijuana. And what we know is that black and white communities use, possess, distribute marijuana at approximately equal rates. And the adult population here in the District of Columbia is about 50-50 black and white. Yet black people in the District of Columbia, almost every single year that we studied, made up more than 90% of the arrests, about approximately 91% of the arrests overall. And the arrests were essentially concentrated east of 16th Street, which was an important finding because west of 16th Street you have not only some of the highest marijuana usage rates in the country, but you also have the presence of major universities like George Washington University, American University, Georgetown University, where you saw virtually no arrests. So essentially what we saw is that marijuana was being used to create a sort of second-class citizenship of black people in the district in much similar way that the criminal justice system is functioning and mass incarceration is functioning overall. We had tremendous issues with mass incarceration and incarceration rates in the district. But the issue of marijuana being used by the Metropolitan Police Department to racially profile people in the District of Columbia was actually brought to our attention by teenagers who came to the ACLU and said, look, we're getting searched, and they say we smell like marijuana. They say our hair smells like marijuana.
Who are they? Who are they? Who are they talking about?
The police department, the Metropolitan Police
Oh, that's what the
Department.
police would come up and say, your hair smells like marijuana.
Right. And we heard a couple different instances where young people would say, they're saying our hair. But it wasn't always hair. The police would use the odor of marijuana to initiate a stop. And, the students at the time, we heard this in multiple different venues and in different places, and the students were telling us this. And they were saying at the time, look, we don't even smoke weed. We don't have weed. They're just stopping us for this and harassing us.
Mm-hmm. And these were black students, usually.
Black students, 100% African-American students. And when we looked into it, we found that juveniles made up a staggeringly low percentage. And I say staggering because it's not the perception that people really have about marijuana.
You think it's kids, right.
They think it's kids, and it wasn't. It was men, African-American men, primarily between the ages of 18 and 39. And, the police came back and they said, well, perhaps, in black communities, people are smoking marijuana outside. So we actually looked at arrest reports, and we found that was not the case. At least that couldn't explain the arrest. And furthermore, we looked for patterns of clusters of arrests. The police and other public officials at the time really harnessed this public imagery of, black men gathering on street corners and people are calling the police on them and we have no choice but to come and arrest them. So, really, the marijuana conversation in the District of Columbia was the first time in the country that we've had drug law reform that was motivated by a call for racial justice. And, it was also really representative of this transformative moment in the black community where this idea of the harm done by the war on drugs was really defined in terms of disenfranchisement from rights and rights and liberties and full participation by the war on drugs. So an expansive notion of what the harm has been to black communities.
Well, can both of you explain what you mean by that? I mean, I know your report is awesome. I read it last night, and I encourage my listeners to go to the website of the ACLU National Capital Area, and there's a report and an article called "Billions of Dollars Wasted on Racially Disparate Arrests for Marijuana," and it's in D.C. You should really take a look at that if you're interested in this issue, and if you question what is being said if you look at that report, there's no question about it. Plus, the waste of resources. What exactly, though, do both of you mean in terms of the harm to the community? What do you mean? I don't quite understand that.
Go ahead, Maurice.
So when we're talking about harm to the community, Seema, accurately pointed out that police are using marijuana as a pretext for harassment inside of communities of color. And so, somebody would get a criminal charge for possession of marijuana, and then ultimately, when you have a criminal record, this, creates a significant number of collateral consequences, which I always say, look at it from a health standpoint, saying that the long-term effects of being involved in the criminal justice system are significantly worse than any long-term effects associated with marijuana use. Once you have a criminal record, you're unable to apply for public housing. You're unable to apply for grants to get an education. You find it's significantly more difficult to gain employment. And, all these sort of things, housing, education, and economic development are basic tenets towards good health in society. And so when you really look at it, there's significant harm and damage being done to the community solely through the use of marijuana as a entryway into the criminal justice system. And that's largely why we decided to focus a campaign around this issue and ultimately remove it from the criminal justice system.
So your findings factually are consistent with the notion that, number one, black men between the ages of 18 and 39 are being singled out for this kind of arrest and prosecution. $2 billion in public money is being spent, not just to support the police, but also then the court system and so forth like that. And three, once they're arrested, then they get cut out of college education, jobs, all kinds of things. Is that correct? I mean,
I think that it's a couple different things. Number one,
hold on just a moment, Seema. We kind of went over. We have to take a break, and then when we come back, I want you to continue with your explanation of this, because I think it's important for us to understand it. Okay, we'll be right back. Sorry.
News updates on the web at WOLDCnews.com.
Moving today or tomorrow and not sure who to call? Well, your worries are over. Ted's Moving and Hauling at 301-254-8221 is your one-stop place to call when you need to move from your apartment, home, or office. Ted's Moving and Hauling is one of the best, with experience and professional movers to handle all your needs with no job too large or too small. Ted's can do it all. Call now to find out more. 301-254-8221. That's 301-254-8221. Need something hauled away? Ted can do that too. Ted's Moving and Hauling is one of the best, and with some of the best prices in town. So if you need to move uptown, downtown, or out of town, call Ted's Moving and Hauling today at 301-254-8221. That's 301-254-8221. That's Ted's Moving and Hauling, moving you from your home, office, or church. Call Ted's today at 301-254-8221.
Okay, guys, when it comes to shaving, you've got to check out Harry's.com. Why pay $32 for an 8-pack of blades? Harry's high-quality German-engineered blades are half the price of drugstore brands. Harry's starter set with a razor, 3 blades, and shave cream is just $15 with free shipping. With promo code 6060, you get $5 off your first order. After using code 6060 at checkout, you can get an entire month's worth of shaving for just $10. That's Harry's.com, code 6060.
News Talk 1450 WOLAM, where information is power.
Welcome back. You're listening to Law Talk with Ethel Mitchell, and we are talking today with Dr. Malik Burnett and attorney Seema Sadananda about the marijuana laws in D.C. and the impact that the laws have had on communities of color. You can call in if you have questions or comments to 1-800-450-7876, 1-800-450-7876, and we welcome your questions. Seema, I hope you don't mind me calling you Seema. It's better than murdering your last name. I hope I'm not doing too badly with that. Okay, thank you. But please continue with what you were about to say before the break, if you don't mind.
Yes. So we know that D.C. was spending, prior to decriminalization, more per person for marijuana enforcement as compared to any other state in the country. So D.C. spends a lot of money on marijuana enforcement.
When you say a lot, you mentioned like 18 million, 40 million or something like that?
Between 9 and 40 million, I believe, was the estimate, depending on which factors you take into account. But it's quite a bit of money that's not being used in such a way that actually makes our community safer. But we don't think that the D.C. Metropolitan Police was actually going out and necessarily targeting black men for marijuana enforcement. What we believe is that because of the over-policing of black people and black communities and a aggressive approach to enforcement of low-level offenses in the District of Columbia, black men in particular have a high contact rate with police officers. Now, if you search enough people, you're going to find a certain percentage that have marijuana on their person, because about 15% of the population at any given time, may be either actively consuming or consumed in the recent past, etc.
And that's black and white.
Yeah, black people and white people.
Okay.
And so I think that the reason that we saw these high number of marijuana arrests is really the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the racial profiling of entire communities here in the District of Columbia. And one example that's been getting, a bit of press lately is with respect to the jump outs, which are unmarked cars which travel in black neighborhoods in D.C. And in some neighborhoods...
What is that? I never heard of that. What is that?
So jump outs are unmarked police cars where police wear tactical vests.
Tactical vests? Are you serious?
Yes. It's a militarized tactic made famous by the MPD, and that's still regularly used. In fact, there's an excellent article right now in Politico of an interview with 8 kids from Ballou, and they talk all about the jump outs and the role policing is playing in their communities. But the jump outs are a part of the drug enforcement and the gun recovery tactical unit. And essentially what we understand today is that these jump outs are operating essentially with impunity in black neighborhoods in the District of Columbia. Jump outs are really they're really a tactic that's used by different divisions of the Metropolitan Police Department. And what they do is they jump out and they initiate a stop, a contact, a search. According to residents in the district, these are some of the most aggressive type of police encounters. And they just instill a sense of fear in the community. So I think that the issue, yes, it's terrible. I mean, it's terrible, the fact that they jump out. But the really unconstitutional part, as you know, is the fact that they're doing so without individualized, reasonable suspicion. You're
that's
black
unreal.
in a
That's
so-called high-crime
awful
neighborhood. You're male. You fit some profiles, so I'm going to stop you and search you and come up with a justification after the fact.
That's awful.
It's absolutely awful. And so
I bet they wouldn't be doing that over in George Washington or over in American U.
Right. No, they absolutely wouldn't. And, when you think about it, and what we know about not just marijuana, but drugs across the board, actually, there's one category where black and white people seem to differ on drug use, and that's with respect to cocaine. It seems that, according to self-reported usage rates, that white people actually use more cocaine than black people. But you wouldn't have, a description call in DuPont Circle saying, I see a white man in a business suit who fits the description of someone in possession of cocaine, and then have white men randomly being stopped because they're wearing suits in DuPont Circle. That would be laughable. That would be wholly unacceptable.
It ought to be if they can do it in our community.
Well, I think that the thing is this isn't how we should be dealing with drug possession of any kind, whether it's marijuana or cocaine or PCP.
I agree with that, but if you're going to do it with one, you need to do it with all. I'm sorry, that's me talking. This is making me mad. I didn't know anything about all this.
Yeah. So it's been in the news, and it's been difficult, because unlike other major police departments around the country, the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department does not meet, best practice standards with respect to data collection. We don't have, they have their own definition that they're applying with respect to which data they're collecting and which data they're not. They're not aggregating it. We don't have information on consent searches. We don't have information on the use of tactics like the dump outs, on the use of militarized equipment, on stop and frisk. We just don't have the data. And that's what we're really working on now, is pushing the D.C. Council to start holding the MPD accountable.
That is outrageous. That is really, really outrageous. That we need to do something about this. We're talking to Dr. Malik Burnett of the Drug Policy Alliance. Their website is drugpolicy.org. His phone number is 202-683-2983. You can reach him on Twitter at Drug Policy News, or on his email at mburnett@drugpolicy.org. And Seema Sadananda at the ACLU National Capital Area. Their website is aclu/nca.org. That's their website. Seema's email is seema@aclu-nca.org. Her phone number is 202-601-4278, and she's on Twitter at DC Seema. Let's continue. This is disturbing. I mean, we need to put some limits on these cops. This is not right. Tell us more about why you consider the drug war to have been a major disaster for the communities of color, both in terms of their enforcement and in terms of the impact, the residual impact that it's had over these past 40 years on our community. Tell us what you've learned about that. Malik, please, and also Seema.
Sure. I think Seema is spot on when she describes the approach that the police are using in low-income communities of color, focusing on jump outs. It really speaks to the damage that the drug war has done to police-community relations. Earlier this week in an article in the Daily Beast, Kathy Lanier, Police Chief Kathy Lanier, said about marijuana, our enforcement of marijuana laws causes the community to hate us.
You think, maybe? Yeah.
No, of course. And I mean, it's just not,
what do you expect?
Limited to marijuana. In fact, it, goes to, the enforcement of all drug policy across the board. I mean, you can look at not only the jump out cars, but, the enforcement of SWAT team raids in low-income communities of color. Those are largely done in order to seize drugs inside of people's homes. These are, drug use is a victimless sort of crime that, people, if they have problematic drug use, should be able to see a medical professional. They shouldn't necessarily be put into the criminal justice system, because ultimately they still have their problematic drug use problem, and now they have a criminal record, which only serves to exacerbate that problem. And what we've seen, if you look at the incarceration rates over the past 20 years, is we've seen like some 450% increase in the number of people in prison, to the point now where the United States leads the world in number of people incarcerated, and that's incredibly problematic.
I heard a radio program the other day, and I don't remember who it was talking, but it was about men who had come out of jail and can't get jobs. And there's an organization about that, because all those people, and I keep saying men because it's largely men, but there are women too that are caught up in this foolishness, and they can't. Those are people that are non-productive. They can't take care of their families. They can't work. They can't go to college. They can't do all these other things. Is that? And you're saying, as a medical doctor, this should be a health problem? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at it, the tremendous amount of dollars that we are putting in to enforcing drug laws inside of the country could be redirected towards investment in public health infrastructure and mental health, which is, woefully underfunded in this country. And, sometimes people end up using drugs to help treat in a non-medical sort of way their mental health addictions. This is largely because they can't get access to appropriate and adequate mental health care. So if we are going to be intentional about trying to get a better understanding or create better public policy around drugs in the country, then we have to start looking at removing the criminal justice system policies from drugs in the country and moving it more towards a public health framework where, we can be providing the help that we need. You only need to look so far as Portugal, which in 2001, 14 years ago, decriminalized all drugs in the country.
And what happened there? What happened?
So if when this was happening, it was naturally an incredibly controversial thing, and there were lots of people who said the sky is going to fall, and there'll be rapid increases in drug use. But ultimately, what you've seen is you've seen a precipitous decline in teen drug use. You've seen crime fall overall. You've seen the incidence of HIV/AIDS and hepatitis decrease significantly, given the fact that people can have access to safe and clean needles. You've seen people gain better access to mental health services, and ultimately the prison population has decreased by some 40%.
Wow. Wow, that is huge. My God, if we could do that in this country, think of the amount of money we would save.
Absolutely, and think about the uses that we could put toward that money, not only to give people mental health services, but to help ensure that the people who are coming out of the criminal justice system are able to better re-enter into society and become productive members of society.
That is huge, and we could put those people to work instead of just wasting away in a cage in our prison systems.
Exactly.
That is huge. That is absolutely huge. Seema, in your report to the or in the report of the ACLU, I noticed that you in your footnotes you cite to other states that have decriminalized adult possession of small amounts of marijuana. There have been 13 states, according to what I'm reading here: Alaska, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Nebraska, New York, Oregon, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Washington State. And there are 22 states that allow medical marijuana laws. Tell us, what has been the impact there, and what do you want to see happen to drug laws in general? What would you ideally, since you have studied this, both of you have studied this carefully, what do you recommend at this point?
So, D.C. was not the first state to decriminalize, as you alluded to, but no other jurisdiction decriminalized for the reasons that we did and the way in which we did. As I mentioned earlier, we had very low support for marijuana reform in the District of Columbia, particularly amongst the African American community. I believe the support rate was around 37%. After the report came out and we launched a campaign and spent about a year really talking to people in local communities and explaining the findings of our study and talking to them about their experiences, the position really shifted. And when Malik and the Drug Policy Alliance ran the ballot initiative, the success they had really reflected this changing opinion in the African American community about the approach to the war on drugs. Malik alluded to a harm reduction approach to drug use and abuse. And I think that that is extremely important for black communities where, as policing is increasingly being funded, other services in the public safety paradigm, whether it be mental health services, drug rehabilitation services, etc., are being dramatically defunded. So I think it is about a better use of our public safety resources. However, when you think about the harm that's been done to the black community by the war on drugs, it's much deeper than addiction, and it's much deeper than drugs, though drugs is certainly the reason for the bloating of our criminal justice system. And Malik alluded to the impact of mass incarceration on the community, on the health and well-being of the community. In the District of Columbia, we have staggering incarceration rates. 3 out of every 4 black men can expect to spend time in jail or prison in the District of Columbia. That is awful. That's insane.
That's insane.
It's absolutely unacceptable. Now, when you look at why people are getting arrested, why do we have this high contact for police in black communities? Immediately you hear people talking about black-on-black crime. But there was some really important data that emerged alongside the ACLU study that showed that 96% of the more than 48,000 arrests every year are for nonviolent offenses. And unsurprisingly, they are of black men largely.
So are you saying that it's not black-on-black crime, like violent crime or anything like that?
No, absolutely not. That's not why black people are, that's not the reason for the high contact between officers and black people. It's traffic violations, largely connected to inability to pay these exorbitant traffic fines.
Are you serious?
Their licenses suspended, and it's essentially a version of a debtor's prison where you can't pay your traffic tickets because they're so expensive in D.C., and then you get a license suspension, and then you're getting racially profiled, pretextual stops for minor mechanical violations, and they run your license and you get arrested. Drug possession made up the overwhelming majority of drug arrests, and marijuana made up the overwhelming majority of drug arrests. Marijuana was a big part of it, so-called disorderly conduct. These are quality of life offenses, and though D.C., police officials' rhetoric is really about community policing, that is in no way reflected in the numbers that we see here in D.C.
Wait, Seema. I want you to slow down. I want you to repeat what you just finished saying, because I'm stunned. I really am. Because you hear all these pundits talking about black-on-black crime, and that's what the problem is, and that's why the police have to be so vigilant and blah, blah, blah. It sounds like they're just making work for themselves by preying on people. Can you repeat those statistics that you just gave? Because you're saying 96% of the arrests
96% of more than 48,000 arrests every single year, largely of black people, and I'm only talking about the District of Columbia, are for nonviolent offenses. So I'm not saying that all the violent offenses are about black-on-black crime, because they're not. But I'm just saying that at least 96% bear no rational relationship to black-on-black crime. So,
wow. This is important information. Thank you, Kathy Hughes, for information is power. Okay, keep on going. I'm sorry. This is amazing.
So I think, we're at this really important moment. The DOJ has come out with a study on Ferguson, and what we're going to find as we look into the similar statistics here in D.C. is that D.C. probably has even more startling statistics on incarceration. I think that when we think about moving police out of the center of the public safety paradigm, that's one important step. Decriminalizing is an important step. Having accountability, they should have to report on their activities that we are paying for as taxpayers and tell us how we need to figure out what's effective and what's not. But I think that, underlying it all, and what Michelle Alexander has been talking about, is about economic disenfranchisement that's really perpetuated, reproduced by the criminal justice system at this particular stage. But the fact of the matter is you have sections of our community which, at the intersection of race and class, that are wholly criminalized and then excluded from participation in our economy. So we're at this critical moment, not just to reimagine policing in America, but to really take a look at how race and institutional racism is really supported by our current institutions, and give it a shot and try to dismantle it for once and for all.
So let me just try and put that into a different language, if you don't mind. What I hear you saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that by arresting, by having over 96% of your arrests in D.C., and we can probably find this true around the country, be for nonviolent offenses, having tremendous amounts of arrests in the black community, and arrests for traffic tickets, for suspension of licenses because you can't pay your traffic tickets, for marijuana possession, which is basically a victimless crime, then you are essentially making it so that the black people who are arrested, which are largely black men, cannot go to college, cannot get a job, and keeps the community poor and underserved and really weak by the way in which the criminal laws are being being administered. Is that what you're saying?
I think that's exactly right. And furthermore, we know as lawyers that although slavery was abolished, involuntary servitude was still protected by the Constitution in the context of a person who's been deemed a criminal. And that there are a number of different places in the 14th Amendment and elsewhere throughout the Constitution that provide for disenfranchisement. When I say disenfranchisement, I mean they take away your rights. They might take away your rights to vote. And there's a whole range of rights that can be taken away. And that is okay in this country as long as you brand someone a criminal. As long as you say someone's a criminal, then they can be disenfranchised. And
that's more than just not being able to vote. I would like somebody to go to every school and tell our young people in those schools that being arrested means, or could mean, because you lose your driving license in some states. You can't you can't get into college, or you can't get loans for college. You can't live in subsidized housing. You can't get a job in so many instances. And that's a much broader, it's not just legal disenfranchisement, it's an economic burden that it's almost impossible to get out from under.
Yes, and exactly. You can't participate. And then now that you're excluded from the mainstream society, you are even more of a target for police. So it's a cycle. It's by design, and I think it's something we can actually change. One thing that needs to happen is that police need to play a fundamentally different role in our community, a role that actually makes our communities safer. And the second thing is that police are not the answer.
No, they're not.
They might be the problem, but they're not the answer. The answer is a lot deeper. It's going to be about reinvestment back in our community as we see these billion-dollar marijuana industries emerging across the country. We need to have a reinvestment into the communities that have been disparately impacted. So it's about housing, it's about education.
Be more specific, and Malik, chime in here, because sure. When we talked, you were saying that what you really would like to see is have marijuana be taxed, and that right. Income from those taxes be used to help the communities that have been so sorely impacted. Can you explain that? What did you mean there? Sure, because now I want to get into what you all are recommending going forward. What can we actually do?
Sure. So, Seema has outlined the problems very well. And, some of the solutions that we came up with are based on trying to, directly address those problems, particularly as it relates to marijuana. As you are well aware, in the district, possession of marijuana is currently legal. However, it is still illegal to sell marijuana, which is why we cannot set up, legal stores to be able to, provide access to marijuana to the citizens of the district. However, there's a bill that has been introduced by council to do exactly this. Unfortunately, the Congress, given the relationship between the District of Columbia and the Congress, They have, slowed this process down, but there are legal avenues that the council can pursue to do this. But long story short, you're seeing in Colorado, last year alone, they grossed $70 million in tax revenue.
In tax revenue? Wow.
Right,
we could use that money.
Exactly, from the sale and distribution of marijuana. The CFO, Chief Financial Officer of the District of Columbia, has projected that the district would gross a windfall of approximately $130 million if, legal sales were to be able to be set up.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So in Colorado, they've used that revenue towards education, marijuana research, and things of that nature. What we are advocating for inside the council, inside of legislation, is to use those monies from the sale of marijuana or the tax revenue collected from them to reinvest in the communities most harmed by the war on drugs. So this means, like, for example, there's a very, very tangible sort of thing that we're talking about here. The District of Columbia is unique in that it has a office called the Office of Returning Citizens Affairs. This office is largely responsible for dealing with the 60,000 formerly incarcerated individuals who live in the District of Columbia and helping provide them wraparound services so that they can get reintegrated into the normal community and decrease their likelihood of recidivism. And so what we're saying is that we should take some of this money and use it to underwrite or improve the functionality of the Office of Returning Citizen Affairs so that they can continue to provide more wraparound services so that, ultimately we'll be able to reinvest in those who are directly most harmed by the war on drugs. Additionally, there are opportunities for getting these formerly incarcerated individuals involved into the new emerging marijuana community or marketplace. We talk about opportunities for collective ownership, for community ownership of dispensaries and operations where we're providing jobs for people who would normally be locked out of other sorts of avenues for employment. So this is what we're talking about when we're talking about reinvesting in the community as it relates to the sale and distribution of marijuana, and it could have some serious ripple effects for the economy for those east of the river.
That would be great, and we could save that $18 to $40 million we waste on policing and the money that we put into courts and prisons when we prosecute people for possession of marijuana as well. We're near the end of the program. It's gone so quickly, but I want to thank you both for coming, and I want to give you the opportunity to kind of wrap up and let us tell us some final thoughts and recommendations for moving forward, specific recommendations that individual people as well as collectively we could use. Seema, you want to go first, please?
Sure. I think that, marijuana reform was a really important first step, and we have influenced the debate here in the District of Columbia, now across the nation, about the role of racial justice in drug reform movements. However, it's only one step. There needs to be accountability for the police department here. There's ways in which people in D.C. can participate in their local government that have a much stronger impact than the average person in the average place, because we are a district and our D.C. council makes our laws versus having to lobby a state legislature. And there's a oversight hearing on the 10th of March, and the public should definitely come out and tune in, and we need to engage the community in a discussion about
where is this meeting? And
the meeting is at the Wilson Building, where the D.C. Council meets.
Okay,
and to oversee the police department.
Okay, and that's on the 10th of March. Do you know the time?
10th of March. 10th of March at 10 a.m.
At 10 a.m. Okay, so my listeners, especially those of you who are retired out there that are listening, go to this meeting and participate. Go to this meeting and participate. What would you like people to be cognizant of and be vigilant about, Seema, in terms of this issue?
I think, just going back a little bit, we talked about the harm. One of the harms of mass incarceration is the way in which it takes away self-determination from communities. I think that communities need to locally really come together, and participate in defining what public safety needs to look like. And the ACLU will continue to do our campaign work on policing in the district, as will DPA, and we really want people to come out and get involved in your churches. The churches in the District of Columbia, particularly the Baptist ministries, have played an instrumental role in transforming the opinion and the perception people have of these issues. So I think church is a great place to start, and in your local communities. So,
okay, so get involved. And you can contact Attorney Seema Sadananda at the ACLU at 202-601-4278, on Twitter at DC Seema, SEEMA, on Facebook, DC Seema. And again, she works with the National Capital Area of the ACLU. Dr. Burnett, what would you like to say as a kind of closeout to the audience?
Sure. So first, I'd like to say thank you for having us on. I think this is an important discussion.
This is hugely important. Yes.
Two, I'd say we've come a long way as it relates to marijuana reform in the district. We still have a little bit of a ways to go. First and foremost, it's important for district residents to follow the laws that are outlined currently. That largely the mayor's office sums it up really well. Homegrown home use. That will go a long way towards, ensuring that we can continue to move forward on reforming our marijuana laws. There's an opportunity for the council, as I alluded to earlier, to pass a tax and regulate bill. Inside of the Home Rule Act, the mayor has the capacity to use contingency reserve funding to pass the act. We will be continuing to educate the public about this in terms of next steps going forward. The Congress has only blocked the district from using current fiscal year 2015 funds, but ultimately the council and the mayor's office can stand up for the district and set a stable, regulated policy as it relates to marijuana, so that we can effectively tax and regulate and reinvest in the community.
And we only have 2 more minutes, but is there a similar effort going on in Maryland?
There is. I actually testified on Wednesday where in Maryland they are looking to pass a legalization bill, and people can get involved. Email if you live in Maryland, email your senators, Kurt Anderson and Jamie Raskin. Tell them that you support the bill. It will be voted out of committee here in the next couple of weeks, and we'll be continuing to reform marijuana laws up and down the East Coast. So definitely stay engaged and stay involved, and as Seema said, talk to your elected officials and tell them that you want to see a different policy as it relates to drugs in this country. And
my listeners can contact Dr. Burnett at drugpolicy.org. It's a nonprofit organization that is working on drug policy, drugpolicy.org. I want to thank both of you, Dr. Burnett, Attorney Sadananda, for all the work that you're doing and for sharing with my listeners this very, very important information about what sounds like a critical issue that impacts our community in so many ways that even I didn't have any idea about. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all that you do. This is Attorney Ethel Mitchell. We are at the end of our program. Please listen in next week. You can contact me at Ethel at lawtalkwithethelmitchell.com at 202-772-1988. We will be back next week with another very informative program. And again, you can listen to the program and all of the programs on the website at Archives. This should be up by Tuesday. Have a good day and a good week.
News updates on the web at WOLDCnews.com.